Good evening, everyone. This is Rahul Reddy. I'm a mentor with Career Launcher Bangalore. And I have with me Vaishnavi Prasad. She is CLAT 24 All India Rank 100 and a Karnataka State Rank 5. So congratulations first up.
Thank you.
So let's start right at the very beginning, right? Tell me a little bit about yourself and when did you get this idea that, I want to be a lawyer?
I started getting really into law in about 8th, 9th grade. Basically, I really like writing, so I wanted to go for a profession that would have a bunch of reading, writing type things. And law was the first thing that came up because my grandfather is also a lawyer. So I talked to some of my parents' friends who did law, and they advised me on how to proceed and how to know if I'm interested. There was a course done by NLS at one point on for people who are interested in law, and I joined that when I was in 9th. It was like a month-long thing, so that also kind of pushed me forward towards this.
Right. Can you tell me a little more about this course? Because this would be really useful for people who are considering law but not really decided as yet.
So it was a few years ago. I don't exactly remember all the details, but
So,
yes.
what did the course entail, and why was it interesting?
So it was called the FLE course, and basically it entailed around four four sections, like basically reading critically, speaking persuasively, things like that. And it basically the basic skills that you would need as a lawyer, critical thinking, how to read between the lines and absorb things from what you've read that aren't clearly given, stuff like that, is what it was meant to help with. And they kind of give you a score by the end to see how well you've done.
Right. Okay. So that kind of confirmed that the skills that you have are indeed suited to this particular profession.
Yeah.
And then you started with Career Launcher at Indranagar, and this is in your class 11 for a 2-year program.
Yeah, for the 2-year program.
Right. So briefly, can you cover the journey, the highlights in terms of how you went about your preparation, what really worked for you?
So I started doing mocks pretty early, like my older friends' previous year papers and stuff like that, and their mocks. So from different coaching centers and things like that, so I could get used to the time limit and things like that. And beyond that, I also did all of the CL mocks. The practice papers in CL were useful for fine tuning, and the mocks were useful for helping me adjust to the time slicing. So I was working on accuracy and time duly like that. I feel like the most helpful thing about CL is that it really gives you a lot of motivation when you see your friends and stuff doing well and working hard, because sometimes you get burnt out in the middle of CLAT and you're like, you know what, I'm tired, I don't want to do this, it's not really worth it. But just being in an environment where there are people around you who support you and who believe you can do well more than just your parents, having supportive teachers, that all really helped me keep going.
Right. So the legal classes itself, like how far, what exactly was interesting about the legal classes?
Honestly, the legal classes, especially with Animesh sir, were just really engaging overall. If you can keep your attention in it, it's like a precursor to doing actual law in the college. So it's like if you're enjoying that, you're going to enjoy law in college. So on top of helping you with CLAT, it also helps with motivation. I feel like a lot of people just struggle with motivation. At least that was my biggest thing, to keep going and keep working at it.
Right. So I think one part is because it's a long-term preparation. So there are times where energy levels and motivation drops. Also, when you're taking so many marks, it's very likely that there's certain times where performance scores deep. Yes. So how would you react when they say, okay, particular mark suddenly score dipped a bit?
Honestly, I'd get pretty down for a while, but then overall my scores were kind of consistent, and I just move on by analyzing my mistakes. If I made a mistake in, say, X way, I'd make sure that I didn't do something like that again, because if the mock is finished, there's no point in like thinking about it and saying, oh, I did this bad, I did that bad, you know? Like that's not going to fix anything in the future. But if you move on and implement what you've learned in subsequent mocks, then I think you can really improve a lot.
Right. So coming to the other part of the support system, which is the people that you prepare with. So how important is it to have motivated and obviously talented people who kind of compete as well as support each other?
Honestly, I feel like that was the most important factor for me. Like mocks, you can, you can get different sections online. There's a lot of practice books, but having a group of friends who motivate you to keep going when you're down, that's something really important, because like you see them as, if you're all doing relatively the same, you see them as your potential peer group at NLS or whatever college you get into. Like it helps you look ahead instead of just focusing on my score in this mock or my score in this sectional or my score in CLAT. You can focus on a bigger picture, which kind of keeps you from getting fully dejected and completely giving up and saying, I'm not going to try, there's no way this is going to happen. It also, like GK, it's boring, but when you do it as a group study thing, you can do quizzes together and stuff, and it becomes more interesting when you discuss things with your friends instead of just like sitting in an empty room memorizing everything.
So you had a group who kind of stayed with you for most of your preparation?
Yeah, I had a decently study group until closer to the end.
Right. Then one of the smaller aspects of mocks that we sometimes don't realize how important is taking the mocks offline in the right environment in that sense. So would you say that that is something that worked for you in terms of being able to take the mocks offline? And of course, later on, we also had mocks which were centralized for the entire city, and we had classrooms and a much
Yeah.
more of exam setting.
Mm-hmm. I think that giving the mocks offline was genuinely really useful, just because, like, you know, how to shade in the OMR sheet. What if you make a mistake in the OMR? When you're giving online, you can change your answers. When you're giving offline, you learn to be really careful that, like, I meant B and I'm marking B. And that kind of takes time out of your flow. Like, if you're answering really fast and you end up messing up your markings, you have to figure out how not to do that again. So I feel like offline mocks are useful for that. And also, like, if the question paper is annoying to open, like just folding the paper, even small things like that can really mess you up on the actual day of the exam. If you're giving things online, it's a lot more convenient. So, like,
and particularly those large scale mocks which were conducted at Joseph's in the
exactly, that gave you more of an exam environment. Like, I saw a lot of people, walk out of the mock or say, I'm not giving it today, I'll give it tomorrow. And like the flexibility around the mocks was useful at the beginning, because, like, you feel a little more at ease giving the mocks, getting used to the pattern. But beyond that, towards the end, I think it was important to have the centralized mocks, just because otherwise you take the exam itself very laxly without like taking it too seriously, and then you might mess up in the end.
I think it was important to make this point because we, for the sake of convenience, have to provide a online option for the mocks. So everybody gets that online option, but we would recommend that students use it only when there isn't a choice. So when you have a choice in offline, worth taking that little extra effort and doing the mock offline rather than taking the easy route out and doing the online option later.
Yeah, of course. Like, I think I gave online mocks a few times, which was in the last week of CLAT and when I was traveling. But beyond that, I tried to come offline. Like, the main point is that you've given a mock, you know how CLAT works. But if you want a better experience or just more experience with how to do the thing, the specifics, the small details that might get really big in the exam day, how to not panic when you're in a center and there are so many loud people around you, all of that stuff, the offline mocks are very good for that.
Right. So
Like, you don't make a big difference compared to reading comprehension, but like if you can't concentrate, your reading comprehension is out anyway.
So, for example, one of the things that we do is that St. Joseph's College of Law is an actual CLAT center. So, and unfortunately, it does have some amount of traffic noise. So when you actually in a mock, then you also kind of get to simulate that. Yes, there is some amount of noise that seeps in. and but that's also going to happen in the real CAT, or could happen in the real CLAT if you are in that center. So that helps.
Yeah.
Good. But just as a confession, uh, for all that advice that we have given to students on being careful and not making silly mistakes, I actually ended up myself
Mm,
mismarking an OMR, one answer. But yes,
yeah.
it does happen.
Yeah,
So I think
exactly.
so. One thing we tell students is don't be too harsh on yourself, because it's not possible to completely eliminate silly mistakes. We minimize, and that's probably good enough.
Yeah.
So on the day of CLAT, what happened on the day of CLAT once you opened the paper and started reading the questions?
So I started with English and I finished the whole thing in like 10 minutes, and I was sitting there like that was easy. Like just unexpectedly easy. I was like, okay, so I guess some other section is going to be harder. Then I did GK and I was like, okay. So and then I did like one of the math passages and that took me like
Did
5 minutes and
you
I was just
realize that?
wondering what is
Did
going
you
on in the paper.
Sorry?
Like
Did you realize that the answers to GK, quite a few of them were there in the
oh
passage?
yeah, I'm used to reading the passages for GK because honestly, GK was my weakest subject. So like I was taking every extra bit of help that I could. So like I started reading a passage, then I went to the questions, and I was like, half of these are reading comprehension questions.
Yes.
Not even like questions where the answers given in the passage, but like inference-based type questions. How would the children have felt? Things like that. So GK as a whole felt kind of nonsense, to be very honest. But like it worked out for the better for me because if GK was the tough section and everything else was easy, then I feel like I would have been kind of in a worse position than I am now.
Right. So I think two things mattered. One is, yes, uh, you were able to realize that answers were there. The other part, as you said, doing English fast, that would have given you that little extra time to search the passages in GK, also maybe in logic if it is required, or apply it in quant, allowing you to actually complete the paper and attempt high.
I don't know. I did end up finishing pretty early, which also concerned me because, like, I was honestly expecting CLAT to be similar to last year's paper, like just asking random difficult questions, but they kept it very easy. Like, but honestly, if I'd started with logic or something, I would have gotten very confused. There were those weird what would you do in this situation questions where there isn't exactly a right answer. So I'm glad I started with English and then did legal because both of those were like unusually easy.
But of course, in logic, I'm sure you would have worked with questions where choices were close, and using elimination to try and get closer to an answer.
Yeah. Like I know that I typically tend to finish my papers early. So when I'm very unsure of answers or like I have two equally good answers and I don't know how to pick, I leave that for the end because like since they changed the paper pattern, right? I got used to finishing 150 questions, then they made it 120, so I started finishing half an hour early.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So
Good.
like
So
I did.
once you finished the paper, you were quite happy with your effort.
Um honestly, I finished the paper and like at first I thought it would be fine and then I got kind of concerned because like it was very easy. I was like, what if they've done something weird in this paper? What if all the right answer options would actually like pick the wrong answer or something? I was just wondering what was going on.
Right.
Because I was like, there's no way they actually made it like this. But turns out they did.
And the few days between the end of CLAT and the actual results. So how anxious or worried were you?
I corrected CLAT when the first answer key came out, and that really freaked me out. I was like, I knew there was something wrong with this paper, but then they deleted it, and my dad was like, "Don't worry about it." Like when they put up a new answer key, my score was good, and I was like, "Okay, hopefully this gets me somewhere." Because sure, my score was good, but also it was an easy paper, so I was expecting everyone to be scoring high, right?
So yeah, a lot of
Uh,
speculation of how high the cutoff could go and all
yeah,
that.
exactly. So like I was worried about that, but also I was like, I'll try and focus on ALAT. I'll see because if the cutoff is like 108 and I got in the first answer key, like the first correct answer key, I got 101. So I was like, If it's like that, then if I focus on ALAT instead of focusing on having anxiety about how CLAT went, then like I might have a second chance, you know?
True. I think I remember I was there the day of results, before the results were announced, I think the afternoon at
Yeah,
that time.
I saw you at CL.
Yes. And even then, we were not really sure what the number would be. I mean, I was hedging my bets and looking at it. But
Mm-hmm.
it did turn out to be a high scoring paper with a lot of
Yeah,
people bunched up in that 90s. Mm,
yeah, exactly.
good. So all ends well, I guess. I think that's the important part. So
Mm-hmm.
NLS Bangalore it'll be,
Yeah, I think so. It
right?
should be.
Okay. And a lot of uh, we have this session every year where toppers from the previous year, obviously most of them from NLS because they stay in Bangalore,
Mm-hmm.
interact with the next batch, which is the 25 batch, right? You were there in that session
I
when
was
the
there when I think Atreya and all came, right?
right.
Yeah, I was there.
I think we'll probably this year it'll be your time to come with the toppers and share your
Yeah, I got.
experiences. Right.
No, honestly, this is kind of like beyond what I had hoped for. Like, I didn't think I'd get this far in CLAT, honestly.
Right. But good. I mean, I'm sure the teachers would probably say that you deserve it, and that's what
Yeah,
the marks. That's what really matters.
yeah,
So, uh, uh, big congratulations to you again and to your family. I'm sure they're very happy, elated,
yeah.
and hope to see you soon. We'll gather together all the Bangalore students.
Mm-hmm.
There's a good chunk this year who will be heading to NLS and other top colleges, and
Mm-hmm.
we'll have a bit of a celebration.
Sure.
Okay.
Cool. Thank
Thanks.
you.